Hello, subscribers! It is part 2 in my ongoing series, reading through the Apocrypha and judging for myself whether or not they belong in canon. I have done zero research into any of these books, other than what I covered last video. Step 1 is to just determine, just by reading, whether or not they should be canon, or how close to canon could they be. Step 2 will be look for YouTube videos or articles or something trying to argue for them to be canon. Try to find out what reasons there are besides reading it that there could be for them to be canon or not. And then hopefully after that make a conclusive decision for myself whether or not to consider any of these books canon. And the first book, or second technically, the book up for today's video is Tobit. I am not going to subject you to me reading the whole thing. I will read it off camera, so to speak, and then I'll just use this recording to give my notes, rather than writing notes and then trying to remember what I was talking about. Now, right away, just from the first 3 verses here, it is already looking a lot better than Esdras. It sounds a little more Old Testament-y, and it begins the way you would expect a book to begin. I don't quite understand the timing, and I can't highlight things properly, but I'll have to figure that out as I go. This part sounds a little different than what you normally get in the Old Testament. Not in a suspicious sort of way, just different. Now all the tribes which together revolted, and the house of my father Naphtali sacrificed unto the heifer Baal. But I alone went often to Jerusalem at feasts, as it was ordained unto all the people of Israel. La la la. Kinda sounds a bit braggadocious, and makes me wonder, is there any other author in the Old Testament that makes these kind of bragging statements right out the gate? And I don't think I would count Moses calling himself the most meek on earth. That has a totally different feel to it. Alright, so verse 10, Tobit is being carried away by Nineveh with his wife Anna and son Tobias. I assume they're with him. And when we were carried away captives to Nineveh, all my brethren and those that were of my kindred did eat of the bread of the Gentiles. But I kept myself from eating, because I remembered God with all my heart. So, did he just starve himself to death? Or, not to death, but like just stop eating altogether? It still feels better written than Esdras, but I feel like there's some missing context here. And in verse 16, he's giving his bread to the hungry. Bread he refused to eat? I'm probably making too much of that, but it just bugs me. So it's very autobiographical, which does feel unusual. Like, even when Moses was writing about himself, he spoke in the third person. I don't think there's any book in the Bible that's quite as first person, written in the first person as this is. It's a bunch of I did this and I did that, la la la. So far, no issues. I'm predicting I will at least recommend Tobit for reading. Hang on, I caught an inconsistency now. Going back to the first chapter. Then all my goods were forcibly taken away. Let me highlight that. There we go. Neither was anything left me besides my wife Anna and my son Tobias. So all his stuff was taken except his wife and son. But in chapter 2, now when I was come home again, and my wife Anna was restored unto me with my son Tobias in the feast of Pentecost. So which is it? Were they taken or not? I'm getting conflicting information here. Already I'm getting confused again. So, he's got an abundance of meat at this feast that's been prepared for him, so he tells his son to go and just find a random homeless man to share in the feast, because he's got so much meat. And his son comes back and says, someone's been strangled and cast out, and I don't understand his response to that. Then, before I had tasted of any meat, I started up and took him up into a room until the going down of the sun. I assume the him in this sentence is his son. Then I returned and washed myself and ate my meat in heaviness. like, eating your meat in heaviness is one thing, but why? Okay, no, I got it. He is taking the dead body, so he's got this dead body in his room, and okay, now it makes sense. This is what happens when you try to do it live. Ish. I will probably continue to be confused and then be unconfused throughout this because I'm responding as I read it. And then he goes out after dark to bury the body, and people mock him for it. What was the point of going out after dark if there's people there to see you? Oh, nasty. He got pooped in his eye. And I knew not that there were sparrows in the wall. And mine eyes being open, the sparrows muted warm dung into mine eyes, and a whiteness came in mine eyes. And I went to the physicians, but they helped me not. Moreover, Acgacarius did nourish me until I went into Amos. Ooh, that's nasty. Just a quick note on chapter 3. He starts to pray because he got in an argument with his wife. And his prayer is a lot better than the prayers you get in Esdras, I just had to say. It actually feels like a real prayer. Okay, just came across the first hint why Tobit might not be canon. In verse, well, come on, there we go. 7 and 8. It came to pass the same day that in Ecbatane, the city of Media, Sarah, the daughter of Raguel, was also approached by her father's maids, because that she had been married to 7 husbands, whom Asmodeus, the evil spirit, had killed, before they had lain with her. If you go to, what is it, Samuel, maybe? Maybe before Samuel, I'm not sure where it was, but Obed, Tamar, I think the woman's name was Tamar, her first husband angered the Lord and died, and then Obed, doing what he did, he was supposed to father a child, but he spilled his seed on the ground. He did evil in the sight of the Lord, so he died. So my point is, why are these deaths of these 7 husbands being attributed to an evil spirit? I would mark this as a point against Tobit being canon. Let's continue. Although, I do notice now that maybe this isn't an argument for or against canon, only that the Pharisees knew about Tobit. So it does give credence to the age of Tobit, because the scribes asked Jesus a question about the woman with 7 husbands. They could have been directly referring to this story. Okay, and it gets another mark against the idea of this being canon. Let's start in verse 16. I hate how this thing highlights. So the prayers of them both were heard before the majesty of the great God. That'd be Tobias and Sarah, who I don't know if they even met at this point, but doesn't really matter. And Raphael was sent to heal them both. So we have mention of an angel, but how does Tobit know that it was an angel named Raphael sent to heal them? That is, to scare away the whiteness of Tobit's eyes, and to give Sarah, the daughter of Raguel, for a wife to Tobias, the son of Tobit, and to bind Asmodeus, the evil spirit, because she belonged to Tobias by right of inheritance. Doubling down on Asmodeus, the evil spirit, being a thing. Tobit's not a prophet. He's certainly not claiming to be a prophet. So how does he know any of this? This is very sus. Not looking good for Tobit. At least in terms of being canon, in terms of being God-breathed, infallible. But still I would still recommend it for reading so far. Let's keep going. Oh, come on, be consistent. In Tobit 4, it drops the first-person narrative and switches to third person or second person. In that day, Tobit remembered the money which he had committed to Gabriel of Rages and Media. Inconsistency. I would also mark that against canonization. Putting aside the inconsistency, chapter 4 was pretty good. In fact, I'd say it's probably a mark in favor of canon, chapter 4. It was basically Tobit giving Tobias his will. Well, giving Tobias is wisdom, telling him how to live. And it's all seemed like good advice. Chapter 4 was a pretty good wisdom chapter. In chapter 5, although we have Raphael the angel coming back again, pretending to be Azarias, the son of Ananias, and that's a little sus. This is another mark against canon. You never see an angel claiming to be somebody else. They might be in disguise, might not reveal themselves, but what they do reveal will be truthful. Not to mention, again, how does Tobit know this is Raphael in disguise? Maybe it comes out later. I don't know. I don't feel like it will, but I'll find out. Okay. A couple things. First, I have to agree with Anna, Tobit's wife, Tobias' mother, in asking why Tobias has to go get the money from this person who Tobit left money with. Why couldn't Tobit go himself? He's the one who left the money with this guy. So why is Tobias going to pick it up? We get no indication as to why that is. But more than that, verse 21, verse 20 and 21. Please skip a verse. Then Tobit said to her, "Take no care, my sister. He shall return in safety." Now I think about it, saying my sister seems a bit odd, but whatever. "And thine eyes shall see him. For the good angel will keep him company, and his journey shall be prosperous, and he shall return safe." What? This makes it sound like he knew that it was Raphael in disguise. I should have got a tally mark of some sort to mark down all these marks against Tobit being canon. Because here's another one that he has given no reason to why he should know that this was an angel. I guess to play devil's advocate, or maybe he's just using the generic term of angel. He just means the good messenger. Okay, but that's a bit unusual. You don't actually see the word angel used that generically. Even though angel means messenger, when it's used, it's usually a messenger from God, not just a generic messenger. Okay, so Tobit's literally jumping the shark right now. Right away in chapter 6. "And as they went on their journey, they came in the evening to the river Tigris, and they lodged there. And when the young man went down to wash himself, a fish leaped out of the water, and would have devoured him. Then the angel said unto him, Take the fish. And he laid hold of him. They roast the fish. Yeah. Like, is this just a shark in the river Tigris? How would this river fish have eaten Tobias? Another mark against canon. It is not looking good for Tobit right now. Oh, and not too many verses later, we have sorcery. Then the young man said to the angel, Brother Hilarious, to what use is the heart and the liver and the gall of the fish? And he said unto him, Touching the heart and the liver, if a devil or an evil spirit trouble any, we must make a smoke thereof before the man or the woman, and the party shall be no more vexed. The angel is right there. If there was a devil or evil spirit, he could just drive them away on his authority. Okay. Someone may have to correct me in the comments if I get this wrong, but, so the angel is telling Tobias that he's going to set him up with Sarah to be married, and, verse 12, And the maid is fair and wise, now therefore hear me, and I will speak to her father, and when we return from Regs, we will celebrate the marriage. For I know that Raguel cannot marry her to another, according to the law of Moses, but he shall be guilty of death, because the right of inheritance doth rather appertain to thee than to any other. That, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is not a death penalty. You don't get killed for marrying your daughter off to somebody else. You get fined. Tobit started out so well. I thought he knew his stuff, but this is not right. There's no way he's guilty of death. Oh, this chapter just doesn't stop with me. So now Tobias is complaining. He's saying, he knows the reputation of Sarah, that she's had 7 husbands who all died. And the angel's response is, "Dost thou not remember the precepts which thy father gave thee, that thou shouldst marry a wife of thine own kindred?" What does that have to do with it? It's not like she's the only kindred. Surely there are other women in the tribe of Naphtali. And the rest of his answer doesn't exactly inspire confidence either. Wherefore, hear me, O my brother, for she shall be given thee to wife, and make thou no reckoning of the evil spirit, for this same night shall she be given thee in marriage. That's not a reason to not reckon the evil spirit. How about don't reckon the evil spirit because I will bind him? Or something. Hang on. Something. Yeah, I figured out my faces again. Yay. Anyway, continuing on. Okay. I guess I spoke too soon. He kept talking. And apparently this is what the heart and liver of the fish was for. I can play devil's advocate here and say that the angel was just condescending, meeting them in their own superstition. I don't buy that, but I guess that's an argument that could be made. This was just the superstition of the day that there was this evil spirit, so he fought it with his own superstitious nonsense just so Tobias would believe it. Yeah, that's just, God doesn't condescend that much. Like, he'll speak to you in terms you'll understand, but he's not gonna make rituals that affirm those superstitions. Also, just want to point out that, this entire story could theoretically be true, and this Azarias guy just isn't the angel Raphael, or an angel named Raphael, because he hasn't admitted to being an angel. And if this story is true, I think that makes more sense. If this guy is just a superstitious guy himself and not an angel. Another side note, this probably doesn't mean anything, but you notice the women are more likely to be named in Tobit. Got Anna, got Sarah, and here we have Edna. Like, there's a lot of passages in the Bible where they will just say the wife, in this case Raguel, they would just say the wife of Raguel and not mention her name. I don't know if that means anything important. I just thought I'd point it out. Oh, for crying out loud. Earlier, we had heard that Tobit's prayer was answered and the scale of his eye, the white scale on his eye, was removed. But when he had heard that Tobit was blind, he was sorrowful and wept. So is he blind or not? Was he healed or not? Yeah, I might be beating a dead horse here, but, chapter 8. And when he remembered the words of Raphael, took the ashes of perfume, put the heart and liver in the fish thereupon, and made smoke with, which smell, when the evil spirit had smelled, he fled to the utmost parts of Egypt, and the angel bound him. Why did he need to flee for the angel to bind him? It just doesn't seem to match reality. I do kind of find it funny that Raguel went and dug a grave for Tobias thinking he would die. That was funny. Oh, but what's funnier still is that Raguel rose and went and made a grave, but after he finds out Tobias is still alive, then Raguel bade his servants to fill the grave. So he could dig it, but he couldn't fill it. Chapter 9 is really short. It's unexpected. And this angel Raphael has got to be the most patient angel ever. No angel has ever stuck around this much. And Tobias is just ordering him around, basically. Like, doesn't this man have a life of his own? Like, you hired him to take you to there. Did you actually pay him enough to stay with you until you returned back? I don't know. Okay. I just have to laugh at this. I didn't mention it earlier, but when Tobias went to pick up his wife, he brought his dog along. And we heard nothing about this dog. And by the way, chapter 10 was nothing of note. It was also pretty short, just twice as long as chapter 9. But anyway, in chapter 11, verse 4, and take in thine hand the gall of the fish. So they went their way, and the dog went after them. That's all we hear of this dog. Why is he mentioned? I know this isn't supposed to be fiction, so it's not like the writer is supposed to have a meaning for every little thing. He's just recording what happened, but even then, you still should have a reason for mentioning the dog, even if it's not some story you're crafting. Like, I mean, even if it's not a story you're crafting, you're still crafting the story, so to speak. Like even true stories, you have to choose how to tell them. So why do you keep mentioning this dog? For apparently no reason. Okay, so here's where Tobit's eyes will get healed. So it mentioned earlier that prayer was answered, but I guess I should have realized that Sarah's prayer, which happened at the same time, also had not yet happened. So I will stand corrected on that nitpick I had earlier. This also explains why Tobit did not go himself to get the money he left, because he was blind. Also, I almost forgot to mention, Tobias and Raphael just left Sarah. They just ditched her. They went on ahead of her to get to the house faster, so she's on her own, making her way to the house that she's never been to. That doesn't sit right. Curious about how weddings happen right here, because now it says, and Tobias's wedding was kept 7 days with great joy. But I thought he was already married. He already slept with Sarah, and he stayed there 14 days. I know there's a difference between engagement and the actual marriage, but he was in the marriage bed. So, am I missing something? Is there some culture or context that I am not getting here? Something doesn't add up. Well, look at that. Tobit 12. Raphael does reveal his identity. And there's still 2 chapters to go, first of all, but there's still some problems earlier, but like the idea that Raphael would pretend to be another person doesn't sit well, and the whole superstitious, condescending sort of thing. But other than that, it does seem very consistent and does give ample praise to God. And when they find out Raphael is an angel, they are afraid, as one should be in the presence of an angel. So maybe some of the marks I have against canon get half erased. Okay, chapter 14. Nothing of note in chapter 13. First thing to note is we find out Tobit's age. He was 85 when he got blinded, and it took him 8 years to be cured. And in verse 4, we get more specific on timing. I was thinking myself earlier that maybe they were around the time of Jonah because they were in Nineveh, and here's a confirmation. Go into media, my son, for I surely believe those things which Jonas, aka Jonah, the prophet, spake of Nineveh, that it shall be overthrown, and that for a time peace shall rather be in media. And Tobit died at 158. And perhaps this also explains the shift from first person to second person. And Tobit just has to get one more knock-in on me. Nabucodonosor. We got that name again. It was doing so well. Like, is that spelling of Nebuchadnezzar more common than I thought? At the very least, nothing else here really struck me as Greek. So, as far as I can tell, and that is the end of Tobit, as far as I can tell, Tobit was written when it claims to be written, around the time of Jonah. And it all seems consistent enough that I think it is factual history for the most part. But I am still a bit sus about the angel Raphael. The way he handled the quote-unquote evil spirit and how he hid his identity just do not sit right, and I think it's safe to say Tobit is not canon. However, I do recommend reading it, because I do think it is mostly accurate history. But we still never found out why the dog was mentioned. Anyway, that's it for the reading portion of this. Next, I will have to try and research Tobit and see if there are any arguments out there for why it should or should not be canon. And I will do that in a separate recording and get back to you in a second.
Eventually.
Okay, I am back. And from what I gathered, there was a lot more reasons to distrust Tobit than I realized. Apparently it's not even historical. And the only copies we have were in Greek. It was originally written in Greek, which just further shows that it is not a true account. Which means one of the best arguments the Catholics have, and they don't make good arguments. I'm just going to say that now. The arguments I could find actually defending the canonization of Tobit were not good. But the best one they have is that maybe Tobit is just a book of wisdom and not meant to be historical, like Job. And they didn't mention Job. I'm mentioning Job here because personally, I think Job is a parable and that Job was not a real person, which is why I consider this the best argument the Catholics have in their favor. But there's a big difference between Tobit and Job. Tobit claims to be historical. Job doesn't. Tobit specifically mentions in the time of such and such king. Job doesn't tell you the timing of when Job was written. Job uses places, which I assume are real places, but that's all you get. You don't get the timing, which would imply historical historicity. What implies that it's somehow historical. Not to mention, Job was not written in first person. Tobit starts out in first person. This implies that it's not meant to be taken as fiction. It's not as if fiction can never be written in first person. Obviously, Moby Dick was written in first person. But Moby Dick is also consistent about being written in first person. Whereas Tobit starts in first person and then switches to second person as if Tobit himself died and the rest of the book had to be written by Tobias. This implies it's trying to sound historical, but even the Catholics agree it is a work of fiction. And among the things I saw when researching this is there were some stuff that I even didn't notice on my reading of Tobit, that Tobit is actually preaching work-based salvation. I didn't even really notice that until it was brought up. And that would be because we have this false doctrine that's camouflaged among true statements. Like, giving alms is good, true, but giving alms will save you, that is false. So that is why I just didn't recognize it. Also, while I was researching, I did find a list of what the Catholics actually consider deuterocanonical, or what they actually consider canon. So, confirmation, Esdras was not considered canon by Catholics. But now I have a list of what they actually do consider canon. I'm still going to go through the entire Apocrypha. Which there are still a few that are not on this list, but are on my list of what I have to read. So, but this will be good to keep in mind for later. Among the bad Catholic answers was Trent Horn, and really anybody. When you bring up the fish guts being used to drive away demons and cure blindness, none of the Catholics seem to answer this right. They always seem to go, well, what about this in the Old Testament, or this and this, like Moses parting the Red Sea, God uses natural means and yada yada, but it completely misses the point. Tobit is not. Let's use Jesus curing blind as an example. when Jesus put mud in a man's eye to cure his blindness, he didn't tell everyone, you just have to put mud in his eye and it'll be cured. He wasn't giving medical advice. He was performing a miracle in such a way that they knew putting mud will not cure blindness. But in Tobit, Raphael is claiming that fish guts cure blindness. It is not a this will only work this one time type of situation. Huge difference between a one-time only event and a teaching about how the world works. So those are two very different things, and Catholics do not seem to grasp that because they need to defend Tobit. But after looking into it, I am more convinced now than after reading it that Tobit is not canon. And the very fact that there is no Hebrew original, and that the original is in Greek, and it's written centuries after the time when itself claims to be written, that alone is enough to discount it as scripture. In the comments, if there's any book in recognized scripture that does that same thing, let me know. What book of actual scripture is written centuries after the time where it claims to be set? Obviously, you have Moses writing Genesis, but Genesis is not claiming that Genesis was written during Genesis. See what I'm saying? Is there any book that within itself is claimed to be written in the time that it's set, but it was actually written centuries later? Let me know in the comments, and see you next time as we go over Judith. Yeah, Judith, which 16 chapters. Well, see you then.